Worry is imagination being hijacked by fear. If your mind can imagine everything that could go wrong, it can also imagine everything that could go right. Imagined fear does not protect us from anything. It pulls us out of the joy, the beauty, and the aliveness that usually is available right here in this moment. If you're someone who has spent a lot of your life calling worry being responsible or your concerns being realistic, I'm going to talk about how one small change can start to shift the way you move through your life. Not all at once, but little by little until positive possibility starts to feel more natural than bracing for the worst. And at the very end, I'll give you a small practice that will help you begin using your imagination in service to the good life. I'm Jessica. I've spent 25 years and over 20,000 client hours as a psychotherapist and 35 years on my own personal journey of moving from living in constant fear and anxiety as a result of early trauma and loss to healing and calming my nervous system to embracing the full crazy experience of being human. From material science to the intangible mystical, always reaching for a more spacious and joyful life. I used to think worry meant I was being responsible and realistic. I thought that scanning for what could go wrong meant I was being wise, prepared, careful, a good mother, a thoughtful human, someone who had read the fine print on reality and was just making sure we didn't all blow up our lives in a single impulsive moment. Sometimes, yeah, we do need to think ahead. Sometimes we need to make a plan to create the most joyful experiences. We need to ask the questions, check the route, read the contract, pack the thing, or listen to that little inner nudge that says something feels off here. But worry and fear are not the same thing as wisdom and truth. Fear can sound very intelligent. It can sound like maturity. It can sound like love and concern. It can sound like just being realistic. But so often, it's just the part of us that thinks it's safer and smarter to imagine danger than to imagine security. And there's real research behind this. Our brains already have what we call a negativity bias. They're designed to notice threat more quickly than beauty because for our ancestors, missing the predator mattered more than missing the pretty flower. But modern life pours gasoline and lights a match on that ancient wiring. Trauma can train the nervous system to keep scanning for danger constantly. Parents who worry out loud can teach a child's brain that the world needs to be approached with constant caution. And constant news exposure can keep the body in a state of alarm. One study after the Boston Marathon bombing even found that people who watched 6 or more hours of coverage a day had a higher acute stress response than some of the people who were actually there. So in a lot of ways, we were trained to always ask, what if the thing goes wrong? What if the bad thing happens? And while our imagination is busy ruminating on all the possible negative outcomes, we're missing so much of our lives. The excitement of trying the new thing, the joy of supporting our adult children setting out on a new life adventure, the small, beautiful things available to us in pretty much every moment if we tune in and get present rather than allowing our mind to be off somewhere trying to manage some scary future that almost never actually arrives. Mark Twain is famously quoted as saying, "I've experienced many terrible things in my life, most of which never happened." And this is our reality. We live in fear of things that rarely ever happen, suffering things that aren't even real. So I've decided that I very much prefer to wait to experience the suffering unless or until a thing actually happens rather than suffering all along for no good reason. So I want to suggest a question that may sound small, but actually it's huge. And that question is, what if it goes right? What if the good thing happens? Not what if it goes wrong, what if it goes right? I don't remember exactly when I first learned to ask that question. It was probably decades ago at this point, but I do know that I used to be much more fear-based than I am now. My mind was super skilled at finding the thing that might go wrong. And I don't mean in a way that was necessarily obvious to everyone around me. I wasn't walking around wringing my hands, looking terrified. I was showing up. I was handling things. I looked in control, but internally, there was always a part of me trying to predict the next problem before it arrived. This thing people around me were aware of, especially my family. And the what ifs were ever present. What if people reject me? What if my kid doesn't get home safe? What if the conversation goes badly or I say something stupid? What if I make this choice and regret it? What if I take that trip and something goes wrong? What if this life pivot is reckless? What do I need to do to prevent the bad thing from happening? And those questions running inside of us often come out as advice, reminders, cautions, planning, managing, trying to get ahead of everything before anything can go wrong. And what makes this tricky is that a lot of those questions can look like rational maturity. It can look like love. It can look like planning, like being careful, like I'm just trying to help, especially when you're a parent. I remember at some point my daughter was younger, probably like a young teen, but I'm fuzzy on the exact timing. So anyway, through a conversation with her, I became more aware that some of my helpful questions or cautions were not landing as helpful. They were fear questions. I didn't necessarily think of them that way at the time. I thought I was helping her think things through. I thought I was making sure she was safe. I thought I was being a responsible parent. But there's a difference between supporting someone and handing them a tiny suitcase full of your own anxiety. And parents are masters at this. Telling your kid, text me when you get there, is valid, but then it becomes, are you sure that's safe? Who's going to be there? Do you have a backup plan? Are you sure you want to do that? And so our mind thinks the whole world's going to collapse while our kid's just trying to get to their friend's house. Most of us were not raised by people who consistently said, oh, that's a beautiful idea. I trust you. I'm so excited for you. I can't wait to see what opens up. Or even just instead of drive safe, we could say, see you when you get home. The expectation being they will, in fact, make it home. And any fear we express is not going to be the determining factor of whether or not they do, in fact, make it home. Most of us were raised in cultures and families where love and fear got braided together, where concern was treated as proof of caring, where imagining danger was treated as wisdom, where someone questioning your dream could sound like, I'm just being realistic. And then the culture reinforces it everywhere. The news is not saying, here are 6 beautiful things that happened today that may restore your faith in humanity, because as the famous editorial principle says, if it bleeds, it leads. And this is causing a lot of damage. But fear gets the attention. Fear keeps us watching. Fear keeps us clicking. And it keeps our nervous systems always braced, always scanning, always preparing for the other shoe to drop. And then we wonder why joy feels elusive, why we can't relax into the good things. There's a distinction that I do want to make between wisdom that helps us discern and make grounded decisions, that helps us listen to our body and notice when something feels off, that helps us prepare in reasonable ways. I mean, that kind of wisdom feels clear. It may be serious, but it's not frantic and it's not fear-based. It doesn't spin in circles. It doesn't create 10 imaginary disasters and then ask you to solve all of them before breakfast. Worry does that. Worry takes your imagination and points it toward threat. Worry is imagination being hijacked by fear. And it's not about shaming the worrying parts of us, the wounded inner child parts. Most of those parts are, in fact, trying to protect us. They learned somewhere along the way that if they could predict the bad thing before it happened, maybe they could keep us safe. But at some point, we really have to ask, is this actually protecting me, or is it just rehearsing a life I don't want to live? Because your imagination is already creating the images of the future. The question is not whether you are imagining. The question is, what are you imagining? What is your mind rehearsing as the default? Are you rehearsing rejection, embarrassment, things falling apart, your child struggling, traffic accidents, the conversation getting awkward, the good thing not lasting? Most of us are. And if your mind can do all of that in full high definition with Dolby surround sound, then it can also practice imagining something good. Not because we're pretending life is never hard, and not because we're bypassing reality, not because nothing painful ever happens, because painful things do and will happen, but because fear should not be the voice in the room with the microphone. There's research in positive psychology that supports this in a really grounded way. Positive emotions don't just feel nice, they widen the lens we view life through. Joy, curiosity, love, contentment. These states tend to open our perception. They help us to see more possibilities. They support creativity, connection, flexibility, and resilience. Fear narrows us. It contracts us. It limits what we have the ability to see and imagine. And again, fear has a legitimate role when there is an actual danger. If you're in the jungle and there's a real live tiger, your biological system is going to experience legitimate fear. But most of the time, there is no tiger. Most of the time, it's only a thought. Only a thought, a possibility, something you made up in your imagination. It's not even real. A cultural script, an inherited alarm bell, a part of us saying, but what if? And so we get to answer back. Not with false certainty, not with everything will definitely work out exactly how I want, but with another question. What if it goes right? What if the good thing happens? What if I am loved and accepted? What if I get to take the trip and it all flows beautifully? What if my child always gets home safe? What if the conversation goes better than I imagined? What if this desire in me is not irresponsible, but the calling of my soul to a more expansive and joyful life? This is something that I practice now in a way that has become much more natural. I still have fear thoughts come in sometimes, of course, but now they often kind of pop in and leave just as quickly. Sometimes I recognize them and almost even laugh at myself a little, like, oh, there she is, the tiny little risk management department entered the chat. Thank you for your service, please have a seat. And in this season of my life, I'm practicing this in a bigger way. I'm building a new chapter. I'm becoming more visible. I'm letting my work move more publicly into the world. I'm allowing myself to imagine the spaces I want to be in over the next few years. The conversations, the teaching, the community, the joy, the freedom, the impact. And I don't do that as a fantasy escape. I do it as a way of becoming available to the life I'm moving toward. Sometimes in meditation, I'll let myself feel it, not force it, not grip it, just feel into it and let the vision arise more clearly. What would it feel like if this worked? What would it feel like if the right people found me? What would it feel like if my voice mattered to more than one person at a time? What would it feel like if the thing that I'm building didn't require me to abandon stability, but actually created a more alive version of it? And because this is bigger than anything that I've tried to build before, there are absolutely parts of me that can still ask, am I being careless? Am I reaching too far? Am I trying to create something that actually won't work? Is this desire a real calling, or am I just thinking too far outside of my box? And this is one of the places that astrology comes in for me. If you're new to my work, I came to astrology as a skeptic, but I had a couple of experiences with my own chart that gave voice to something so intimate in me, something I had known but had never heard reflected back with that kind of precision and validation, that astrology very quickly became one of my primary tools for understanding human personality, timing, and evolution. So when I look at the astrology of this season of my life, I'm looking for the shape of the moment, the pressures, the invitations, the timing, the energy asking to be worked with. And right now, there is something very clear around voice, teaching, visibility, and trusting that what I've lived and learned might be useful beyond the private rooms where I've spent so much of my professional life. So it doesn't feel like astrology is saying, sit back and wait. It feels like the astrology is saying, 'tis the season, work with it. And I'm stretching myself and working with it. We are not just waiting for life to happen to us. We are participating with our attention, with our nervous systems, with our expectations, with whether we keep rehearsing fear or begin rehearsing possibility. That doesn't mean we control everything. We don't, but we're also not passive. We're not irrelevant to our own unfolding. So maybe just pause with this for a second. Where does your mind most automatically go to what could go wrong? And what would happen if for just a moment you let yourself ask the opposite question? You can keep that one to yourself or put it in the comments if you want to make it real somewhere outside of your own mind. This is not toxic positivity we're talking about. Toxic positivity says, don't feel that, don't look at that, just be happy. And this is different. This says, yes, I see the fear, I understand why it's here, but fear does not get to write the story of my life. That's the whole reframe, not denial, reclamation. Reclaiming imagination from fear, reclaiming the body from constant bracing, reclaiming joy as something we are allowed to practice, not something we have to wait for the universe to grant us. So here's the practice. It's very simple. Pick one thing, not your entire life. Please do not try to manifest your entire healed, abundant, organized, spiritually awakened, emotionally mature, perfectly hydrated future self in one sitting. We're not doing that here. Just one thing, something that has a little charge around it. Maybe a conversation, maybe a creative project, maybe a trip, maybe a health appointment, maybe something that you want to offer to the world. And first, notice the fear question. What if it goes badly? What if I'm wrong? What if I can't handle it? Just notice it. Then ask, what if it goes right? And don't just think the answer. Let yourself feel even one tiny version of it for 30 seconds. Really feel the feelings that you would feel if the good thing were true. What if it goes well? What if I enjoy it? What if something beautiful happens? Let your nervous system get a taste of that future too. So many of us have given our bodies years of rehearsing the bad thing. Why not give them 30 seconds of rehearsing the beautiful, joyful, good thing? 30 seconds of possibility. 30 seconds of maybe life is not only something I have to defend against, maybe life is also something I get to open into. When we practice expecting positive possibilities, life begins to feel different. Not instantly, not perfectly, but gradually. More full of hope, more interesting, more connected, more playful. It becomes more exciting, more full of love, not because nothing hard ever happens, but because imagined fear does not protect us from anything. It just pulls us out of the joy, the beauty, and the aliveness that might be available right here in this moment. As a trauma therapist and survivor, I know people suffer. I know life can be complicated. And because of that, joy matters that much more. Joy is not a denial of suffering. It's the allowing of beauty to still shine through the suffering. It's the reprieve in the middle of what's hard. It's the proof that life is still available to us. The warmth of the sun on your face, the sweet smell of a baby, the bird that lands close enough to make you stop what you're doing, the song that suddenly makes your whole body remember that it still wants to dance. These moments are everywhere all the time, but fear pulls us out of them before they can reach us. Joy is what becomes possible when fear no longer holds the mic. Joy is what slips in when the body realizes it does not have to brace for every possible terrible future. Joy is what happens when we stop living only as the version of ourselves the world trained us to be. And sometimes it's just one better question away. What if this thing happens in the most beautiful way? What if I am more supported than I thought? What if everything is going to be okay and I can handle whatever comes my way? What if this is the beginning of something wonderful? If this is the kind of conversation you want more of, please subscribe so these videos show up for you. I'll keep exploring joy, psychological astrology, consciousness, and what it means to create a life that feels more alive, more true, and more beautifully your own.